Get ready to be discharged from the hospital with me as a trait quadriplegic on life support. My name is Christoph, and welcome back to my channel, One Man, Three Hearts. After spending 2 weeks in the hospital fighting off a chronic pneumonia, I cannot wait to get back home and back in my own bed. The first step is removing the IV. And because I'm such a difficult stick, I am so thankful that this IV lasted the entirety of my 2-week stay here in the hospital. Yes! Officially discharged. Yes! Once my IV is safely out, my caregiver, with the help of my nurse, begin to get me dressed. They start with my pants because it's just much easier to get my pants on while I'm still laying in bed. Now, a lot of people are curious as to whether or not I still have sensation in my legs, and the answer is yes, I still do. But thankfully, I don't have any pain and I am not sensitive when I am being maneuvered and moved around. Now, usually when I'm at home, this is something that my caregiver will do on his own, but because my nurse was there, he offered the help. Any kind of movement or stretching actually feels really good on my body. And so you can imagine, after being laid up in the hospital bed for 2 weeks straight, I could not wait to get up and into the wheelchair. Once my pants are on, it's time to get on my sneakers. I try to go with lightweight, easy to slip on sneakers that I don't even have to tie when I'm putting them on or taking them off. From here, my caregiver will then disconnect me from the ventilator and transfer me over to the wheelchair to finish getting me dressed, because putting on my shirt, my hoodie, my jacket, that's all easier in the wheelchair. Not only did I spend the last 2 weeks laid up in bed, but I was also hooked up to the ventilator. And so I was a little nervous about how I would tolerate being off of the ventilator while I was being transferred and getting dressed. Now, while I did feel a little uncomfortable and a little short of breath, it wasn't anything that I can't handle. And I'm sure that my anxiety wasn't helping things. You may notice that I have a catheter in my right subclavian. For those of you that are not familiar with my story, I am back on dialysis for a second time, awaiting a second kidney transplant. And that is my access port where I receive my dialysis treatments. You could check out my second kidney transplant journey playlist in our playlist section for more information about my kidney and transplant journey. Putting on my shirt is definitely one of the tougher aspects in getting me dressed, just because of how tight and weak my muscles are, and because over time I have developed contractures in my joints, and so it's hard to maneuver and move my arms around in a position that allows my shirt to easily slip on. And this is exactly the reason why services like physical therapy and occupational therapy are so necessary and vital for someone like me. While it may not improve my situation overall, it absolutely benefits and helps me in terms of my comfort and overall quality of life. I have to say, one of the things that I love most about being discharged from the hospital is the reaction that I get from the nurses and the staff when they see me fully dressed and up in my wheelchair. It's such a big contrast from seeing me laid up in the bed in the hospital gown, virtually immobile, which I am in the wheelchair, but I don't know, something about being in the wheelchair, I just look more alive. Typically, people in my situation would be going home on a stretcher and need the transport of an ambulance. Just another example of why I am not the norm and a medical mystery. I also take a great deal of pride in how I look and present myself. That is something that's always been me way before myofibrillar myopathy took hold of my body, and so I'm very grateful to still have the support around me to keep me well groomed, clean, and looking good and fresh. Why is it that I always end up leaving with more things than I came in with? Anyway, switching over to our meta point of view, you can come with me and see exactly my point of view as I make my way out of the hospital. Now again, after being laid up in the hospital bed for the last 2 weeks, I did find that my hands were a little weak in terms of navigating the controls of my power wheelchair. I work really hard to continually remind myself that anybody who spent an extended amount of time in the hospital, let alone a disabled quadriplegic on life support, is going to become deconditioned. And so I have to be patient with my body and give it time to bounce back. I had to stop and take a quick break here. Again, my hands were just starting to feel really tired, and whenever that happens, I like to take a pause, give my body a little bit to recover, and then proceed. Remember, it's not about how you arrive at your destination. The fact that you get there at all is victory enough. I was discharged around 8 p.m. And that's because it was a Friday, so I had to still get my dialysis treatment, which is about 4 hours. Also, I still needed one last IV antibiotic dose, which took an additional hour and a half, plus a nebulizer inhaler. Then I still had to wait for all my discharge papers to get organized and signed, which anybody that's been in the hospital knows that can take forever. But once that was all completed, I was finally ready to go. One thing the doctors continually reminded me is that it's important to recognize when it's time to come into the hospital, but it's also just as important to know when it's time to go home, especially during flu season. There's so many different bacteria and viruses going around that you could potentially end up going into the hospital for one thing and catching something even worse. And being that I'm immune compromised, I was ready to go home. And one thing that never gets old is that fresh air finally hitting my lungs once I get outside. I'm not gonna lie, I was starting to get a little claustrophobic being cooped up in that tiny room for 2 weeks, and so just to be outside and feel the fresh air was everything. Now, you know I'm not a fan of the cold, so I didn't stay out there for too long, rolled right up into my Batmobile, which my social worker, again, very surprised that I have my own transport, because someone like me, like I mentioned earlier, usually needs the assistance of EMT services and an ambulance. Another thing that I really appreciate and cherish is seeing that sign for the GW Bridge. I live in New Jersey, but the hospital that I go to is in the city. Thankfully, we are very close. It's not more than a 10-minute ride. Unless there's traffic, that could be a real nightmare. But thankfully tonight we were able to breeze on home. At this point, all I could think about was getting upstairs to my pup Paris. Paris is my 4-year-old Frenchton. She's a French Bulldog and Boston Terrier mix. I had her stay with my aunt and uncle. Those are her favorite people in the world. They're literally like her grandparents because they spoil her to death, so I knew that she was in good hands. And just being in the hospital, I don't want any additional stress worrying about my little baby. Paris is my whole world. I got her during quarantine, and she has been such a lifesaver ever since. Paris! Paris! Hi! Paris! Now, mind you, she's obsessed with my mom, and she hadn't seen both of us in 2 weeks, so she literally didn't know which one of us to go to first. I was a little jealous. I truly believe that Paris was sent to me by God. She's very intuitive and just has a special way of knowing exactly what I need when I need it. For example, after dialysis treatments or any kind of procedure, she does not leave my side and is very affectionate. This is the longest we've been away from each other, so you can imagine. I was showered with all the love and kisses, just not on the mouth though. Tomorrow is not promised to any of us, and therefore I am always extremely grateful every chance that I'm able to be discharged from the hospital and return safely back home. I must pay special recognition and say a big thank you to the entire medical staff at New York Presbyterian's Milstein Hospital, but especially my entire medical team, the doctors, nurses, and entire medical personnel of 7 Garden North and 6 Garden North. They took such exceptional care of me. Not only did they help me to heal and recover, but they were so compassionate, empathetic, they were sociable, funny, and really, I cannot commend them enough. I thank you so much for not only saving my life, but the lives of countless others. Also, a big shout out and thank you to every single one of you, the Heart Train passengers of One Man, Three Hearts. Thank you so much for all of your prayers, support, and daily interactions to continue to help my channel grow and help my movement to move myofibrillar myopathy forward. Please continue to support by liking, commenting, sharing, and continuing to subscribe. Now that I'm finally back at home, the rally and movement has only just begun. I look forward to having you on the journey along with me.